This is the exercises video for lesson 3.4, which was the inverse trigonometric functions. Now the exercises we will work are here from OpenStax Precalculus 2E. As usual, I recommend you try them first and then come back to this video where we will go over the solutions. We begin. I will use a unit circle for each question to help me evaluate an inverse trig function. Every time I have trigonometry involved, it can help me to reference a unit circle. So the first question is about sine inverse, and this will give us an angle between minus pi over 2 and pi over 2. So it's going to give me an angle here, such that the sine value is negative 1/2. Well, the sine is negative down here, and the 1/2 part, this would be about right here, where the cosine is square root 3 over 2 and sine is negative 1/2. This has reference angle pi over 6, and so on this interval, we get negative pi over 6. So this one is negative pi over 6. Now, cosine inverse, this is different. This will give us an angle between 0 and pi. It says cosine inverse of 1/2. Well, cosine's positive here, and this would say cosine is 1/2, sine is square root 3 over 2. This happens at pi over 3. We have another cosine inverse. So we know, for example, just like in the last problem, our angle will be somewhere between 0 and pi. This time, though, the cosine is negative. So we are going to have something here between pi over 2 and pi. We want the cosine inverse of negative square root 2 over 2. This will have reference angle pi over 4, and this will be 3 pi over 4. So this one is 3 pi over 4. In all of these, it's really important to think about the range of the inverse trig function that is being asked for. Tan inverse. Okay, we have two in a row that are tan inverse. Here, we're looking for an angle between open minus pi over 2 and pi over 2. I will just recopy for both of these, minus pi over 2 and pi over 2, open. So the range of the tan inverse is here. First, we want tan inverse of -1. Well, this says sine and cosine have opposite sign, SIGN sign, and so this will happen in this quadrant. In fact, the tan inverse is negative for both of these, so both of these we will be here in quadrant 4. Now, -1, okay. This says sine and cosine are equal in absolute value. We get negative pi over 4 here, where the sine is, maybe I'll write this, note the sine of negative pi over 4 is minus square root 2 over 2, and the cosine of negative pi over 4 is positive square root 2 over 2. And so their ratio is -1. Now, we want the tan inverse of -1 over square root 3. Once again, as I mentioned, this will be in this quadrant 4. It'll be between minus pi over 2 and 0. We have to remember tangent is sine over cosine. So we want the sine theta over the cosine theta to be -1 over the square root of 3. Now, we had one similar to this in the lecture video. What we're looking for here, if we think about the angles that we know, if I let cosine, well, the cosine here will be positive, so let cosine be square root 3 over 2, and the sine be -1/2. Then, when we take sine over cosine, you see we have -1/2 over positive square root 3 over 2. We invert multiply and get exactly this value as tangent. So what does this say about the angle? This says, well, it says the reference angle will be pi over 6. And so we're looking for a negative pi over 6 here. So this is the answer to number 16. We have 3 more. This one, we have to evaluate a trig function and evaluate an inverse trig function. Find the exact value. Very nice. So I will remind us though, before we start each one, sine inverse, we're looking for an angle between minus pi over 2 and pi over 2, closed. So this will give us something here. Tan inverse is similar, except we're looking for an angle between minus pi over 2 and pi over 2, open. And then finally, for a cosine inverse, we're looking for an angle between 0 and pi. All right, so let's get started with number 1. First, cosine of pi. Cosine of pi is -1. So we're looking for the sine inverse of -1. Well, this would be this angle. This is minus pi over 2. We get minus pi over 2. So this is the answer in 24. The next one, we want the tan inverse of the sine of pi. Well, sine of pi, pi is here. The sine of pi is 0. So we are looking for the tan inverse of 0. Well, this is 0 because we want sine over cosine to be 0. Sine over cosine to be 0. Let's write it. Sine over cosine should be 0. Well, the only time a fraction is 0 is when the numerator is. So this will give us the sine is 0. And we are between minus pi over 2 and pi over 2. This is how we see the angle must be 0. Now, last problem, we want cosine inverse of the sine of pi over 3. So this will be cosine inverse of, well, sine of pi over 3 is square root 3 over 2. And the cosine inverse of square root 3 over 2, well, this is in quadrant 1. It will be, say here, this will be pi over 6. So this is the end of our exercises. This lesson was really to have some comfort with inverse trigonometric functions and practice evaluating as we have just done. Thank you so much.